The government in Thailand has banned Pornhub and 190 other porn websites. So after that, of course, there was so many protests and there was a really large online backlash. But what I wanted to ask the two of you was, are there any positives to porn? Or should we ban it here in the UK as well?
I think it's, personally for me, it's tough to answer. I don't feel like I've done enough research methods to know if it's positive or not, or what the positivities would be. One thing I did read was that a lot of people use it for educational purposes, and then I kind of understood it in that matter. Because I think it was last week when I said to you guys, was it last week? Maybe it was the week before. I can't remember what we were talking about, and I said, oh, well, in my secondary school, we didn't have sex education. They just taught you how you gave birth, and that was it. So I can imagine being a teenager and being curious and being like, well, how does it work? Especially if you haven't had adequate sex education and then like your parents are not telling you. I can imagine being like, well, I want to see what's happening and going on the internet and having a look. So I kind of understand it for educational purposes, but then in the same caveat, I don't think porn's realistic, so I don't know how far you'd go. Whether they should ban it or not, it's once again kind of like the drug thing. Because I'm not a partaker, it's very hard for me to say whether it should be banned or not. Or whether, because it wouldn't affect me if it was banned. So I don't know. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, once they've banned it, what are going to be the like consequences? Like what will be so detrimental? And then I can say, maybe then it'll be too late. But then maybe I could say, oh, maybe it shouldn't have been banned. So that's where I stand. It could be banned and it wouldn't have no fuss on me. But maybe others can tell me why it shouldn't be banned.
I mean, I'm probably not the person to tell you because I don't think that there are positives to porn. I would put that out there. I just feel like porn takes away the intimacy of real relationships. I don't think it's about fostering good relationships personally. I don't actually think it's about sexual experiences either. I think it's very much a show, an act, a performance. And I just don't think, I think it does more harm than it does good. So that would be my idea on it. Whether I think it should be banned, yeah, I guess, but it's never going to be. So we've let Pandora out of the box. So it's here to stay. But I'm not really, yeah, I think it does more harm than good. Let me say that.
I mean, I definitely think there are so many negatives to porn, but I actually don't think it should be banned. The thing that bothers me the most actually is, Anissa, is the thing that you were considering. You were like, okay, but maybe people use it for education. That's the thing that bothers me the most about porn, that people use it for sex education, because
yes.
The majority of porn is misleading and it's damaging and it aids rape culture. But even after listing all of those things, I still don't think it should be banned, because if a government bans porn, it's kind of like essentially saying that sex is something sinful, something shameful, something to hide. Whereas I think, we should maybe just try to rework it so that it's healthier, because right now it's through the perspective of the male gaze, the straight white male gaze. And there's just, like I said, there's a lot of things wrong with it. But if you were to ban porn, I dread to think what would happen to the sex industry workers. Like there's already so many laws that make their practice unsafe for them. And I think that would just double or triple if we were to ban porn, because like Sophie said, like even if we banned it, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be banned. If we're being completely honest, all of us have, whether we choose to or not, but all of us have access to things that are illegal. The only difference is when you make something illegal is that you have to put yourself in more danger to acquire it. So if you were to ban porn, it doesn't mean that sex workers are going to stop being sex workers. They're just going to be put in more danger to do their job.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like when they had prohibition in America and they banned alcohol and deaths increased because people were trying to make their own alcohol through all sorts of different methods, and it was very unsafe. So legalizing it means that you can have regulation. So I definitely get that. But something that you said that I thought was really interesting, Luanda, is that if we ban porn, then it's going to make sex seem like it's something dirty and that should be kept hidden. But are we then saying on the reverse that sex is something that should be us viewing strangers having sex, and that isn't, is it? I don't know if the word's inappropriate, but that's something we should be seeing. Like, because isn't there other ways that we can celebrate sex without porn?
Yes, but my issue is that everyone is going to be naturally curious. Everyone's going to be curious at some point in their life. Most likely, like if you're not, there's avid porn users, of course, but the first time you're going to be curious is when you're like a child, not a child, or like a teenager going through puberty or something like that, right? And I think these kind of curiosities they shouldn't be suppressed. And they shouldn't be suppressed because our government said so. And so when you have something that even is, it should be a little bit more normalized, you should allow to be interested in sex and how it works and things that happen. But when you're looking for that sex education, you should be receiving something that's a lot healthier than what Pornhub is right now. That's how I feel. So I just think it should be fixed, not completely eradicated.
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. Because I understood Sophie's question to you. I kind of understand your answer. And then I'm like on the fence because I think I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to make this make sense. My brain is so fuzzy. Like with what you've said, right? About them getting education and getting it from the right places and not being regulated. I completely understand that, but I don't think porn is the place to do it. I think like now with technology, we have so many like podcasts or shows or helplines or, you know, sex shops where you can have sex toys. Like, I feel like there's so many ways to express yourself healthily in a sexual way. And I think porn, I can't speak because I'm not a partaker, but I can't imagine porn being a healthy way for me to express myself sexually. So with it, so I know how you, so I can't, with it, us banning it, saying that sex is shameful, and dirty, I feel like, doesn't porn make sex dirty and shameful? Because this is something you usually do in your closed room by yourself, whether it's late at night, in the day, I don't know what time people like to do these things here, but
all times of the day.
Exactly. You lock yourself away, and it's just you and the laptop and yourself, or whatever the setup is. Like, to me, that's like the hidden, dirty, shameful kind of sex versus like, I was just listening to this sex podcast and blah blah blah. Like, do you know what I mean by that? I feel like my brain is fuzzy.
I think that's a very good point, because as much as we can say that sex is something that should be out in the open, which I agree with. I don't think that there should be any secrets around sex. But like you said, it's not like people are getting together to watch porn together and are just like, let's watch it. Yeah, let's get some tips. This is really great. Like it, and I don't know if that's, I don't want to say people should have shame in watching porn in terms of they should be watching it in secret, because if somebody does have a problem, and let's be very clear, there's only like 5% of people who watch porn who are going to become addicts. So we're not saying it's the greater majority, but we don't want people to be afraid to come forward. But I think agree in terms of what you're saying, Anissa, that the porn industry doesn't, in my opinion, make sex something something to celebrate, let me say that. And a lot of people say that men have unrealistic expectations about women's bodies because they watch porn, or what sex should be like. And as Luanda said earlier, with people going to it for education, there was a study in the newspaper that said 55% of men that they surveyed said they use it for sex education. And that's just a scary number, because it's not real. Like, these women aren't having 10 orgasms. Like, they're not enjoying being thrown down and having their head held down. Like, the lines around consent are very blurred.
This is what I'm talking about.
Like, all these stuff just make me feel like, ban it.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's me.
Okay, so I don't think that, I'm not saying that, yeah, porn is like, it makes us celebrate sex and it's so amazing. I'm saying when you ban something, you have to think about what that action is saying to your community, what that action is saying to your society. When you're banning something, you're saying this thing is bad, I don't want you to do it, and I don't want you to do it so much so that I'm going to make it illegal. So if you do it, you're going to get punished. So now we're going to see people in jail just because they wanted to click on a video of a double D. Like, I think it's just getting ridiculous. And you guys know, with almost everything that we've discussed, my number one thing is going to be freedom of choice. So I don't think that a government should have say in what's going on in your private space. And we all talked about, okay, but what if you want to take your laptop, you want to be private and stuff like that? If you ban porn, it's then going to not be private, because you're probably going to have to put in your details to get into some site, and it's going to be all scammy, and you're going to get a virus on your computer and things like that. But I think the biggest issue with porn, I do have a problem that people with people using it for sex education, and I do have a problem with the amount of rape culture that is in there. So instead of focusing on like binning it, which wouldn't actually bin it, like we've all admitted, it would just throw it underground.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on that, we should maybe think about how we can have that in like displayed in a healthier way, because like Sophie said, the lines between consent and non-consensual relations are very blurred, and it's gross. And like I mentioned before, it's through the perspective of like the white male gaze. So you're going to have like Pamela Anderson looking sex workers when it's just not realistic for the people that you have in your environment. So I don't know. I just think instead of throwing it away, like, why don't we make improvements? Because people don't just use it for education, people use it for pleasure, and people aren't going to stop using it for pleasure, whether or not they're addicted.
Sophie, are you...
You go. No, because I wanted to say something, but I saw you wanted to say something.
No, honestly, Sophie, you felt like you jump and go. Because I saw this, and I was like, what? I was like...
Okay.
I didn't understand what was going on.
That's me trying not to speak over anybody. So there was this article that I read that was really interesting, and as you were saying, Luanda, and as I thought before I really delved into this topic, like, people are watching porn for education or for sexual pleasure. I thought, yeah, you watch it because you want to enjoy yourself. But they were saying some of the other reasons why that ranked quite highly was boredom and coping with stress and trying to find something to distract you. And I think that there's a wider issue if these things are ranking up there with watching porn for sexual enjoyment. Because if people are watching this because they're trying to get away from their problems or because they're bored, for me, I feel like there's a bigger lack going on there, that people feel like this is what they need to turn to, or they're lonely, let me turn to watch porn. So I think that with anything that we can overdo and overuse, so whether that's alcohol or drugs or food or social media or porn, when we get into the place that we're using this to fill a gap within our lives, then I think that there's an issue. And I think it's a very easy gap to fill, because it's kind of like, oh, you know, it's just a bit of fun. But I don't think any of those things that I've mentioned, if you use them in excess, they're harmful. And I think that's why I think it's a little dangerous to say, because I was thinking about this, and it's something that probably like my friends talk about a lot, this idea that when we say, oh, it's not hurting anybody, so therefore we should be allowed to do it. But I'm like, it is hurting somebody. It's usually hurting the person who's doing it. But nowadays it's kind of like, well, if what I'm doing doesn't hurt another person, then it's okay. But what about the toll it's taking on the people who are doing it consistently to escape their problems?
I think that kind of raises a wider issue, because I think there's so many things that people turn to in general, like you just mentioned, social media and television and all those things, where they're trying to fill a gap or because they're bored. We also turn to food to eat. Like, most of the time when we eat, we don't actually eat because we're hungry, we eat because we're bored and we don't have anything else to do. And also with the way that like sex is presented to us, it's supposed to be this like fun thing. So sometimes there are going to be people who are like, oh, I'm bored, what should I do? I'll go out on the weekend and have a one night stand. Or, oh, I'm bored, what should I do? I'll be on Instagram for 2 hours. Or, oh, I'm bored, what should I do? I'll eat Chiquitos and like watch Netflix. Do you know what I mean? So I think that maybe I think like it's a different conversation that doesn't directly stem from porn. It stems from like us not knowing what to do with ourselves when we feel lethargic, like when we're uninterested. And that's not porn's fault, that's not social media's fault, that's something that we need to work on internally.
So what about the other ones? Because I wasn't just talking about boredom, like as a way to deal with stress or a way to distract yourself from things that are going on in your life. Like, not just boredom, because I'm saying anything that we use to stop the gap of not being able to deal with what's going on, then there's an issue. So, but I don't know if we've got time to talk about this, but I just wanted to say there are positives. There are some people who say there are positives to porn. There was a study that was done by Cosmo, and women said that it helped them to become aroused more easier and to tell their boyfriends or their partners what they wanted in the bedroom. So my opinion is, I don't think there's any positives, but there are people out there who do believe there are positives to porn.